Hi everyone, it's Nicki here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those who don't know me, I am a freelance editor and author, and I chat here about my writing, books and anything else that takes my fancy, which brings me to today's tag. A lot of the tags I do excuse me, are based on books or sort of revolve around my writing, if you like. However, I thought it might be nice to talk about some different things for a change. So I decided to create a tag of my own for that purpose. It's just a way for me to tell you a little bit more about myself, some of the things I like that aren't connected to my writing. So I've called this the Writer's Not Writing tag. As I said, I've created it myself, but if anyone out there wants to do it, do feel free. You're very welcome to have a go. So before any further ado, let's kick off with the questions. I don't know what's going on this morning. This is my first video of the day. I'm filming a few and I just seem to have an inability to speak at the moment. So hopefully it'll sort itself out as I get through the questions here. So number one, do you have a day job? Yes, I do. Writing's not the only thing I do. I'm also an editor, as I've mentioned earlier. I work mostly with indie authors on their books. I've done a lot of LGBT fiction, but I've also worked on some mainstream titles as well. So that is my current day job. I used to work in an office. I left that a few years ago to pursue my editing and writing, which has been awesome. I could do with having a bit more money coming in, because obviously you never quite know when you're going to have work. So financially it's a little bit unstable, but I love doing it. So I'm really hoping this year I want to start trying to promote it a bit more, get a bit more work coming in, so that I can continue doing that and I don't have to go off and do something else that I probably won't enjoy as much. Question 2, are you a reader? Absolutely. I don't think you can be a writer without being a reader, but even setting that aside, I've been a reader since I was a child. When I was young, my mother used to joke that my sister and I, she'd have time to play with us and she'd say, what do you want to do? And my sister would always go, let's play with the dolls, and I'd always be, let's read a book. So it's a lifelong passion from the moment I could read, pretty much. And I'll never stop reading as long as I'm able to do it. It's a really great joy, and I love reading a great mix of books, everything from non-fiction to historical fiction, fantasy. I tend to avoid chick lit and true crime, but other than that I'm pretty much open to anything. Although my favourite genres are probably fantasy, paranormal and literary fiction, with a good chunk of historical non-fiction thrown in. Number 3, what are your other hobbies? I love loads of things. For those who know my channel, you may know that I'm a keen musician. I sing, I play piano, flute, I've been teaching myself a little bit of guitar. I like to write the occasional song. I studied music all the way up to A-level, and I did grade 8 music theory when I was back in England, grade 8 singing, grade 7 flute, and I was working on grade 6 piano when I stopped and moved here. I adore music. I also love the theatre. I love the cinema. I used to be a real theatre buff when I lived in England, because I was quite close to London. I used to go to the West End all the time, see the new shows. However, since moving here, Adelaide has a pretty decent music and theatre scene, considering its size. However, it's not quite the same as being near London, and sometimes I just don't have the money to go and see shows here, whereas I had a lot more disposable income when I was living with my parents back in England. So I tend to go to the cinema more nowadays. I used to just go to the occasional film, but now I go really regularly, several times a month. It's a lot cheaper for me, and I've got a growing appreciation of film since I studied it as a compulsory unit in my English degree. It gave me a better appreciation for editing, cinematography, that sort of thing that I hadn't really thought about much before. So I adore the cinema now. I'm a big MCU fangirl. But I go to a mix of stuff, everything from real art house drama pieces to the big fantasy blockbusters, not just Marvel but Star Wars and the like as well. Other than that, I'm very creative, I'd say in general. I enjoy sketching. Some of you, if you follow my social media, may have seen some of my work up on there. I have a DA account as well for those who use DeviantArt. I do a bit of cross stitch and sewing. I've this year taken up paper cutting. I'm just working on my first one at the moment. I'm trying out a template from the beginner's book I bought. However, I've got in mind some designs of my own that I'm going to try out very soon. I I love history and folklore, which kind of comes under my reading, I guess, as well. And I guess that's probably about it. Oh, I'm a pen pal as well. I love writing to my pen pals around the world. So letter writing is another big thing for me. But I think that's probably about it. I've probably missed something. But it's always the way. We'll move on to the next question anyway. So a slightly more frivolous question for the next one. Tea or coffee? Tea. I am very typically British in that regard. Occasionally I'll drink a latte or cappuccino if I'm out at a coffee shop. But really I do prefer tea, and I like a whole range of teas. I've got a cupboard full of different sorts. I tend to drink it more in the winter. In the summer months when it's hot, I usually just have a cup in the morning to wake me up. But in the winter I will drink it during the day a bit as well, just to keep warm. Number 5, what are you passionate about aside from writing? Well, obviously all my hobbies that we've already discussed. I do have quite an obsessive nature, and you will find that if I see an actor in a film and I really love his portrayal, I'll have to check out his entire backlist, and I'll be absolutely mad about him for a few months and watch nothing but his films. I'm saying him because it is usually a guy. There's a few women that I've done it with, but mostly it's the guys. And I'll be completely obsessed, or with a character. So at the time I'm filming this, I've got a bit of a fetish about Kylo Ren, having recently seen The Last Jedi, so everything in my mind at the moment is Kylo Ren. So I get very passionate about that. I wouldn't say I'm passionate about causes. There's definitely causes I support. I'm all for equality and the like, but I'm not passionate about it in the way that I'm a real activist, that I go to rallies or things like that. There are things I support, but they don't take up a whole lot of my focus. I'm not particularly politically minded in that way. I am passionate though about getting people to read, particularly children. I think that's something we ought to be really promoting. And other than that, I'm just passionate about my hobbies, the things we've already discussed, my music, my theatre, my films. I don't really have any other huge overriding passions. Number 6, do you have any pets? Not at the moment. When I was younger, we used to have cats when I lived with my parents. We had a few hamsters along the way as well, a budgie at one point, mostly cats though. Since moving here, I haven't had any pets because I'm a cat person, my husband's a dog person, we can't agree. Plus, it's an added expense and it's an added tie when we do like to be able to pop back and visit my family in England and that, and you know, if you've got a pet in the mix, it's a lot harder. So we don't at the moment. Perhaps we'll end up with a goldfish one day, because we might be able to agree on that. We'll have to wait and see. 7, what was your dream job as a child? Actually, I wanted to be an actress for a very long time. And I did always want to write as well. I always enjoyed writing. I wanted to write a book, but one of the long-term dreams I had that I tried to follow through with for a little while was acting. I wanted to be in musicals. I did audition for some of the big London drama schools, but I got pretty good feedback on the singing and acting, but I'd never done a lot of dance, and so I tended to fail the auditions on the dance side of things. So that kind of put it in perspective for me and made me realise it wasn't going to happen. I was a good singer, but I wasn't so fantastic that I was going to be able to make a huge living out of it. So I sing for my own pleasure now. Occasionally I've done some work with choirs and some amateur work and some semi-professional work at the Royal Albert Hall I sang at once, but as part of a big group. But I kind of gave up on it and turned my attention back to writing and translating, because I actually have a postgraduate diploma in translation. I took that course just before I left England, and my plan was to be a translator. But when I moved to Australia, my main 2 languages, French and German, were not quite as useful here as they had been in England. Here they're kind of looking for people more with the African languages, Asian languages, because we're nearer that part of the world. So that's when I gave up on that and went into writing and editing, and I took my editing diploma since I've been here. Number 8, if you could live anywhere else in the world, where would it be? Well, I have already done the move, as you know. I've moved from England to Australia. However, before that, I was seriously considering Prague or Paris. I love both those cities, their languages that I study. Prague in particular, I'm absolutely in love with Prague. I think it's the most wonderful place. I'm sad in a way that it's become such a tourist attraction now, because when I first went it was still pretty undiscovered and it had a really beautiful vibe, and it's becoming a little bit infiltrated by tourist shops and things these days. But even so, it's still a lovely place. The old city is beautiful, and yeah, it's just somewhere that appeals to me. 9, do you speak any foreign languages? Well, we've kind of covered this a little bit already. Yes, I do. It's one of my passions. I do pretty fluent French and German, intermediate Italian and Czech. More recently I've been learning Danish and Icelandic. My Danish is currently a lot better than the Icelandic. It's probably pushing towards intermediate, whereas the Icelandic is still very much basic. And there's others that I can understand, like Dutch, Spanish, Swedish. I can understand a little bit of them because I've studied related languages, but I wouldn't say I actually spoke them. But I suppose I should have included that in my passions back in question 5, shouldn't I? Languages is definitely one too. And the final question, what music would we find in your collection? I have fairly eclectic musical tastes. I don't listen to a lot of pop music, at least not English pop music. I listen to an odd bit of French and Danish pop music, but mostly it's musical theatre, classical, opera, and a bit of easy listening. I quite like singer-songwriters, like Aushkia, the Icelandic singer-songwriter, Elizaveta, who's American-Russian. I like solo albums by musical theatre performers like Anthony Warlow, but essentially musicals, opera, classical are my main mix with a little bit of contemporary singer-songwriter stuff thrown in. And I do love the old pop hits from like the 60s, 50s to 70s really, but particularly the 60s. I like a bit of ABBA and I like a bit of Beach Boys and that sort of thing. So that's a little bit more about me that's not connected to my writing. So I hope you enjoyed the video. As I said, if you want to go ahead and do the tag yourself, you're very, very welcome. And I will see you all next time with another vlog. Bye for now.